Hello and welcome to FiberTrek. My name is Sarah. Welcome. You are most welcome to my studio space here in the North Woods of Maine. I am looking forward to catching you up not only in the studio, but outside of the studio on one of my first FiberTreks. If you are a patron of this podcast, a deep heartfelt thank you. I am so glad you're all here. Let's catch up. I've been wanting for a while now to work with this old wax canvas jacket I purchased in Orkney eons ago. And I decided to make the wool and wax tote by Noodlehead, which was in the Making zine #2 Fauna. I pulled together some stash, which included some beautiful wool from Addenbrooke weaving I had brought home from my most recent and last Edinburgh Yarn Festival, and I thought this would be the perfect application to pull a couple meaningful fabrics together for use every day. I found the instructions to be really accessible. This was my first kind of bag I had made using this type of construction and fabrics, including all of the hardware, and I did just use the instructions in the magazine. However, Noodlehead does have downloadable instructions as well as paper instructions on her website. I would be lying if I didn't say that I had some trouble working with the wool, which I did not interface, and next time I will. They were very responsive when I did email them about working with different fabrics and their application, and so I deeply appreciated that. But overall, I'm really pleased with how the project came out. It is lined in a Robert Kaufman cotton linen, and I used an order of straps that I purchased from Noodlehead as well. As a commuter, I can think of a million things to put in it, but right now it has knitting. I am pretty sure there are more bags in my future. Hello and welcome to the first FiberTrek in a very long time. I am excited to be visiting with Teresa of Great Bay Woolworks at Liberty Hall Farm. This is a family farm in New Hampshire where they are producing yarn and taking care of their beautiful registered Romney sheep as well as natural colored sheep. But I really want Teresa to share this family story with you, and I hope that you enjoy what we've put together as we navigate all the sights and sounds that a sheep pasture has to offer in the springtime. To see the full interview and hear about all of the great work happening at Liberty Hall, you can head over to my Patreon site. But let's get started with Teresa. So, Teresa of Great Bay Woolworks, we're together. It's been 3 years since a FiberTrek for myself.
Right? Wow.
Yeah. So I'm so excited.
Pardon us.
You can't see me on the camera, but I thought it would be better to have lots of ambient noise of the outside, which is really what draws us to the work we do, which is the landscape and working with our sheep within it. So I think it's appropriate to welcome in all of the
Yes, I'll cue peepers soon. We'll just
extras.
We'll ask them, wood frogs, please join in. Hazel's come to join us. Hi, Hazy.
And so I really found you through, I think, some of the festivals and my dear friend Sue Speak.
Yep.
And so I thought it would be a great place to start. I love the work that you do, and I certainly love your yarns. But I really want to talk initially about how you began and how you've come this far.
Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful that you're even asking these questions. Because, if you are a shepherd, especially at a small scale like us, and even a knitter, most of your knitting friends don't have this part of the fiber in their life. Right. They have the stash in their room, but they don't necessarily have a barn full of fiber animals. So we got into this about 20 years ago. We have our 2 sons. Our youngest son was interested in 4-H, or I should say I was interested in 4-H for him. And I was fortunate that he turned out to be a kid who was interested in 4-H. And so we've had different breeds here over the years, but we've had Romneys now for probably 15. And but I guess my whole family, we just love this breed. Yeah. I think the yarn obviously is the driver for me, and the luster in there, the shade, the range of fleece colors, which is kind of our management objective here, is to have beautiful fleeces in different shades of natural colors. And but also they have many attributes that I think just make them a great animal to spend your life with. I love big, sturdy animals. I'm drawn to mules and draft horses, and Romneys are that, They're like coffee tables with wool on them. Yeah. So they're 4 square. They have these enormous feet, wide hips. Just, I think, a very inquisitive yet peaceful personality. I'm often in public spaces like fairs or fiber festivals where people make the assumption that sheep are dumb. And I'm sure there are sheep that are dumb, and I'm not saying I don't have any, but my reply typically is that they are really smart at what they need to know, and I feel very fortunate to be able to observe that on a daily basis. So whether it's lambing season and seeing that natural behavior kick in, or whether it's just flock dynamics or their relationship with us, I really value all that. And Romneys, for me, bring all that, and then they bring this beautiful fiber, and a lot of it. They're growing about 1/2 inch a month, so we can get 2 crops a year. Oh, wow. So, that's also a nice animal service that they're providing there.
Now, I know that for you, one of the main drivers is, of course, all of the grades of color you can get. Like in Shetland, there's names of that. Do Romneys reflect a similar, or is it just gradations of beautiful, different amalgamations of gray and brown and cream?
Yeah, it's the latter. Morit is probably the only color, and we have a Morit here that we brought in from Oregon, from Iron Water Ranch in Oregon, just for her color. So with the exception of that Morit, which is a gene-based color, they're not like Shetland with that primitive coat that has had probably thousands of centuries of label attached to it. And in the case of Romneys, all the ones that are gray here were born black. So those lambs that are in the barn now are black. And then by the time they're a yearling, they're gray. And then by the time they're 3, they're very light gray. So that black fades over time. Yeah. Yep. So I guess it's hard. You couldn't assign one animal a particular color name, because that color name is lasting just for months at a time. Okay. Yeah.
So it's constantly shifting.
Yep.
So, and one of the things for me, like, I'm super drawn to Romney, as you described, for a number of the reasons with the fleece. But is there also elements of the breed itself that lend it to, I guess I'm thinking of Icelandics have natural resistance to parasites. You mentioned their feet. So are there some characteristics about Romney that lend themselves to this landscape to be able to thrive?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that the tree frog?
Yeah, those are the tree frogs. So they were bred, my understanding from, looking at all that research that's been done, is they were bred to be resistant to foot rot in the Romney marshes, which are in southern England. And so that really lends itself to not only our landscape here, but I think that that changing climate we have on northern New England now,
Yeah.
where we are wetter, we are more humid. So that is an attribute that is associated with them. So I think that's important from a management perspective to have that resistance to that. And but I don't think that was the prime reason for me was that luster in the fleece. Yeah.
And so if we were going to describe that Romney staple, we're using the word luster to describe sheen, silkiness. And when we're talking about a staple, we're talking about the length from where it's sheared, the cut end to the tip. And you're getting 2 crops a year. And what's the length of that you're getting?
So we're getting at least 3 inches, each time.
Yeah.
So the mill needs 3 inches to spin. So we work with Jim and Amy Grant at Good Karma.
Yeah, they're in Maine.
Yeah, they're in Maine. Yeah, they moved recently from Belfast to Bridgeton, and we are very grateful to them. We met them when Tim, I think, was maybe 7 or 8. He's 26 now.
Yeah.
We met him at New Hampshire Sheep and Wool Festival, and their business has just been so successful, and we're fortunate that they stuck with us and they processed with us. Yeah. And they did that really in support of a young shepherd, like sticking with a young person who was, vested in this industry. So that was cool. But so they're about 3 inches for each shearing, and these guys will produce it no problem. We do have the younger members of the flock. They're looking at your camera.
I know.
The younger members of the flock are in Tim's show flock, so they're trimmed, for those show season, which is why if you'll see here, there are 3 animals here that are not shorn yet. So everyone was shorn in the beginning of March, except for the ones that were in the show flock, because their fleece wasn't long enough yet. Okay. It's long enough now, so we'll get them.
And that cyclical season, we're breeding for. Going to steal the show here.
Yeah, I'm going to go take a video of her looking at the camera.
So there, obviously, we're talking about shearing and we're talking about fleece, and there's a cycle that goes with that. And so if we're looking at your year and your management for that particular item of, beautiful fleeces, and then of course you have the show piece. If we start in January, where would you start the cycle? If you were talking about management.
Right, that's a great way to phrase that question. So management for me starts in right now when I look at those lambs and I assess which of those ram lambs I'm going to put on ewes in the fall. And so I'm looking at his Romney conformation and I'm looking at his fleece. Now these guys the ones in the barn now are only about a month old, so we lambed late. And that's a big management issue now for us in New England with this heat we have in August. And kind of lambing, at least for us, we've noticed the viability of sperm is really hit hard by that hot, humid weather. So you could put your rams in mid-August, but they may be getting on those ewes, but they're not impregnating those ewes. That sperm is not viable. So I think our management kind of starts about now when we start to think about almost like next year's lambs already, in a way. Because for us, I'm sorting by not only like that Romney breed character, but the combination of fleece. Like, that kind of thing. Right. So I would say starts right about now. And I've already picked out which of those rams is going to be the buck we'll use in the fall. And Tim will show, there's 2 of them in there, 2 Romney Ram lambs, and Tim will show them, and the one I pick may not be the one that the judges pick. Right. But I tell my 4-H kids, I'm a 4-H sheep club leader, that what you want in the barn and what the judge wants in the ring can be 2 different things, and that's okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, and in this case, I'm looking for, fleece will be the top thing, but also just the confirmation of that.
So you're thinking about the bucks you're going to put in, and they go in August for breeding, and then the gestation period is about 5 months?
5 months, yeah. For Romneys, we found it's almost 148 days exactly for us if we know when that ewe was impregnated. Yeah.
So lambing out in April?
Yeah, we had mid-March, which is late for us. So ideally, we would love that 3rd week in February. And there's lots of reasons for that. But primarily, it ties back into that management cycle for me. Right. And so my cycle with a show flock is a little different from other people's. And so if we have lambs in the middle of February, by the time they get to August, they are ready to breed, or they are breeding, so they become a very sellable commodity for me. I can have them in the pen or the fair, and people will say, do you have any Romney Rams for sale? And yes, here he is, he's ready to go.
Right.
Yeah. So Hazel will be the only one who may jump on the rock. Hazy?
What do you think, Hazel?
So having lambs available, you can tell we've got a lot of opportunity to think about the wildlife today.
Yes, it is. It's spring, and they're all saying 75. What?
Yeah.
75. What?
And you think that's a red vireo, right?
No, the other guy, I think he's a warbling vireo.
Oh, warbling vireo.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've made it into the bucks going in. And then we're just feeding and keeping them healthy with their lambs and all of that.
All of that, yeah.
And then lambing starts mid-February, you hope for, but you've been pushed into March.
Yep, this year, last 2 years, pushed into March. Yep.
And how many ewes are you lambing out?
So, we'll put usually 5 or 6 in with a ram. And that gives us if they were all pregnant, then that gives us enough to pick for our show flock, and then also to lease to 4-H'ers that we have in our club, and then to sell some on. Yeah, or just as replacement use for our own flock.
Right.
Yeah. So we've had more in the past, and that was too many in terms of, the amount of hay I can store over in the barn during the winter, the space we have in the barn. And then also I think it just becomes to have, I used to say to Tim, we're not going to have lambs just to have lambs.
Yeah.
As adorable as they are. And I think we all kind of get that fever, all my friends do, in August or early September, when that ram lamb goes in, and you're really looking forward to the future. And then that future comes and it's minus 17, and you say to your partner, what was I thinking? Like, why did I do that? So we have found that 5 or 6 is a good number.
Still can enjoy the process.
Still can enjoy the process.
But not...
Right. I think, hay and grain, the cost of those inputs have gone up so much. That certainly fair premiums don't keep up with that. And the price that you can sell the live animal for, reflects that. Certainly the price for meat does not keep up with that. You have to take all those inputs into consideration.
Right.
Yeah.
And as far as when we think about management, sheep don't often require a lot as long as they've got access to fresh water, feed, those types of things. But lambing definitely throws a different wrench into it. Do you find that your particular flock, or this particular breed in general, requires a lot of what's the word I'm looking for, intervention in lambing, or are they lambing out and, doing their thing, and you're just kind of making sure there's mineral and they're getting up and having a drink?
Right, exactly. I mean, I think that every year there is a case where you are glad you were there.
Yeah.
And so glad you were there for not only the health of the lamb, but for your future management. Like, do you want a bottle lamb? You do not.
You do not.
No, it's not great for the lamb. It's not, it's something for you. Do you follow through with it? Of course you do. I mean, otherwise you can't commit to this, choice that you've made. But so for Romneys, yes, they are something that requires little intervention. And the ewes we breed have proven that, that they are lambing successfully, independently on their own.
Right.
But we do watch, and we are often here. And I think one of the toughest decisions to make is when you do, do I intervene or do I not? So one of the ewes this year was a good example of that. And she was first-time mom. Wait, let me think which one it was. Yeah, first-time mom to lamb the first lamb perfectly on her own, did all the right things. That lamb was dry and up and nursing when I came down, but there was a second water bag, so I knew there was a twin, and it was a bit of time, I would say over an hour, and she was not lying down and contracting. So typically with us, what I almost always do is call my friend Barb Mariker, who lives down the road. She's our doula and our helps, and I've often told her, not only is she really knowledgeable, but I often tell her that just having you with me here enables me to feel confident about the choices that I'm making. So we stood there and we watched that ewe, and we decided that she was not straining. She was straining in an awkward way. So we did go in, Barb went in, and that ram lamb was way up in there and backwards. Now, in time, would that lamb have turned around and come out on its own? Probably, but maybe not.
Right.
And we're there, and we have the ability to hopefully make a choice for that ewe that serves everyone's best interest. And that's why you always did I?
Yeah.
Yeah. And in this case, yes. Yeah, I think so.
And I know we are going to talk about the yarn because that's a really fun part, the work, right? That end product, and like you just described, connecting with something bigger than just the project, but the land, the shepherd, the generational, the ancestral piece. If you could go back in time and see or practice or learn a thing about fiber arts or shepherding, is there a place that you'd like to visit in time? Or
yeah, I think even today I'm very vested in this working landscape. So my off-farm job is a land use planner. I've done it for almost 40 years. I really value this working landscape of northern New England, that in many cases these scenic visual attributes that we love and assign to this place are the result of sheep. So in that way, I would love to be back I think it was 1845.
Yeah.
So there was 250,000 people in New Hampshire. There were 500,000 sheep. They weren't 500,000 sheep functioning at a Western ranch scale. There was 500,000 sheep because everybody had a flock, probably of my size. My house is 1730, probably here on this scale, meeting all those needs, right? Converting carbohydrate into protein really efficiently, opening the landscape up to attract that biodiversity. So I think then, I'm happy in the age in which I'm living. I love my iPhone and flush toilets and all that kind of stuff. But I think visually, to see the landscape used in that way, I would love to be part of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we lost it very quickly. It was a peak here that quickly went away with manifest destiny and things just opening up.
Mills.
Yeah. All that stuff. But all that hard landscape is still here. All the stone walls on my property. I live in it. I'm surrounded by towns with textile mills on rivers, tidal rivers. Yeah. So yeah, it's all very present here and reinforced visually for me every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here we are. Really?
Right. I tell people at farmers market all the time, you can squish it because, you can't squish the tomatoes, right?
Really hard.
Or the melons, but feel free. Yeah, we're here.
So you do have the fleece we were talking about spun up by Good Karma, and your staple length is over 3 inches.
Yeah, just right around there. Yep.
And it's coming back as a 2-ply.
Correct. Yep, worsted weight.
Yeah, worsted and weight. That's my next question.
Yeah.
And how would you categorize the prep? Would it be like a semi-woolen or semi-worsted or woolen, or is it coming off a card into roving?
Yes.
Yes. So it's going to have a little bit of
loft in it.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think that's another thing I love about Romney yarn is that, we talked earlier about that natural luster that I think you can see on the video, but it also has that squish factor.
Yeah.
So even though, it's a long wool breed, but the sweaters and things are light. I have samples here because we can't wear them today. But, something that looks like it's going to be super heavy on you is not. It just has that buoyancy. So, technical term, I just call it good squish factor.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's that squish and that luster for me. That's all I need to see. And so I don't really have much of a stash of outside yarn. Because I don't need to.
Right.
But even when I am in a beautiful yarn shop, and I love to see what other things are out there, I realize what I like is what I raise. So,
yeah, I've run into that before with producers. And because it, like you said, usually you're attracted to something at a really basic level, the elemental level. And so why wouldn't, as it's kind of refined a little bit more, you know, for use.
And I think the closer you get to the animal, the more of that natural beauty just comes through, right? So in the case of Good Karma, such minimal processing just enables this. You know, our flock is, I feel, super healthy. Their fleeces are super healthy, and the yarn, it looks like it came from just a well-cared, super healthy animal. You know, every skein we sell comes from a particular fleece. The animal's picture is attached to the skein, and so I have that ability to retrieve everything about that animal, so that maybe carries forward in that visual. But for me, I just think it looks it too.
Yeah, for me, as a person who loves to find this yarn and look for those secret, not so. When I first started knitting, they were kind of secret treasure troves.
Yeah.
But now, you know, a real interest has surfaced for this type of, you know, type of stewardship and work around.
And play space too, right?
Play space.
I get lots, we don't have an online shop, and I just couldn't manage it. Our inventory stays very lean. You know, we only have so many, we don't have dye lots, you know, we have fleece lots. So if I have, you know, 30 from an animal and I go to a fiber event, you know, and I have one left, I'm not going to post that online. It just doesn't, it just seems like I don't have that inventory to do it.
Right.
So I encourage people that contact me, as flattered as I am to be asked about, hey, would you sell me some yarn? I really encourage them to go seek that yarn where they are, right? Because that play space is really important about that. Yeah.
And the yarn will be reflective of that.
Yes.
You know, that shepherd and that piece of work that they've done.
And you're enabling that shepherd to keep that activity going forward.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and I know I found you at New Hampshire Sheep and Wool.
I remember that. Yeah. I remember the day that. Yeah.
And you've done the Wayland Farmers Market.
Yeah, we just got into that for the first time. Wow, Deb, they just do such a great job there. And so, yeah, we've done that. New Hampshire Sheep and Wool's in a couple weekends. So that's a big one for us. And we really love that. We go there with the animals. We meet lots of people who want to raise sheep. We meet people who have children who are interested in raising sheep. So that's a big part of the connection we're trying to make there is not just, you know, hawking yarn. It's about explaining this activity still takes place. It's still an important thing.
Right.
It's happening here. Please join us in it. You know, that type of conversation. They're helping establish this new Northern New England Fiber Shed group. So there's a Southern New England Fiber Shed group that's got, you know, Mass, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, because they're amazing producers as well as infrastructure down there. All of our New England identity is still kind of tied up in a way, or we'd love to elevate it again in a way to being that this infrastructure exists, right? So it's the knowledge that we need to keep going forward, and then we need to build that new base of people who are supporting that work. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome, Teresa. Thank you so much.
Well, we're thrilled to be included.
Yeah. Well, you're the first step back in.
The reboot. Yeah, 2.0.
The reboot 2.0.
Yeah, good.
A deep, heartfelt thank you to Teresa of Liberty Hall Farm and Great Bay Wool Works for the time that she invested in this project and conversation. I did come home with some beautiful treasures, and I'm looking forward to knitting these up into mittens. I hope wherever you are that you have an opportunity to seek out some place-based yarns and get involved in a conversation with those producers in your area and bring home a little bit of soulful stash. Welcome to the fiber and knitting portion of the episode. Commuting got the best of me over this vacation, and I left my battery charger for my camera at my parents'. So we are experimenting with the GoPro and all of the benefits that it has to offer. There is a lot happening here. Rob is home today, bustling around. It is the last day of my vacation until the haul to summer. And yeah, so we have a lot of chores happening, but I wanted to sneak in here and talk to you a little bit about what's been going on all of this month. If you are a patron of this podcast, I sent out a brief newsletter at the beginning of April, kind of highlighting what's been happening. I had a birthday and I was otherwise engaged in family activities, school, and preparing to take in everything that April break has to offer. So, what did I work on? Well, I finished 2 items. One is the Nicole shawl by Amy Scher. That has gone on to live with my niece, who I think may be starting a trend in the 1st grade for shawl wearing. She takes it to a lot of places. It's being dragged around exactly as I want it to be, and she was absolutely thrilled with the outcome. So happy to check that off my project list. Cameron was taken care of, Madison was taken care of, and Annie, my other niece, is taken care of with her new quilt. So I can rest assured that the family has their hand-knitted and handmade items heading into summer. I also finished the Kairuna shawl by Ronya Hakaledo. This pattern was gifted to me by Knit My Way Home, Donna Marie's daughter, and their podcast. They did a knit along for this. And so I finally finished mine. I'm thinking way past the deadline. I knit this out of Tidal Yarns in her fingering base. And this is an indigo over dye of, I'm sure, some sort of beautiful gray yarn, because it has a lot of sparkle to it. There's a lot of dynamic motion happening in the color without it being blotchy. And that's one thing I really love about Patricia's dyeing is there's just a lot of movement, but it doesn't, for my preference, come up blotchy or speckled or even tonal. It just has this beautiful consistency, and it's probably one of my favorite yarns in the whole world. So anyway, the lace edging is done. This shawl is knit beginning at the top. It's a garter stitch section, and then it finishes with lace edging. And I've been wearing it quite a bit. It has a lot of cush, but enough drape. I did block it under tension, so I got it wet, and then I, blocked it hard and pulling and stretching and pinning. Sometimes I just wash and lay out, but I really wanted to open up the lace portion of this slightly cushy and plushy yarn. So, perfect for spring. Super happy to have 2 items off the needles. If I didn't mention it, I knit the Nicole shawl in Manchalope, and I think that color is fuchsia and blue, and that's my second project with them in the past 4 months with that yarn. And I really, really loved it. I loved working with it. I'd actually done quite a bit of unspun, haven't I? I did the Manchalope and I did Plotalope right back to back. So the other thing I've been focusing on, speaking of Lope, is my Zora sweater, which is in the Best of Lope book. And it's kind of a bit of a rigmarole here. So this sweater I'm knitting per the instructions, and I am knitting it bottom up. It is a raglan shaped sleeve, and it is a cardigan. Sorry, I'm just missing a few stitches here, which are fairly easy to pick up. So here is the cardigan portion of the sweater. This has a stitch, like a slip stitch pattern, which kind of gives it a bit of texture. It looks a little woven, and when you hold it up to the light, you can actually see through it, almost like a lattice. So you knit the whole body in this, and then you do some yoke detailing using other colors and a mix of different stitches, whether it's slip stitches, stockinette, purl. And I was fooling around with colors. And I think when I originally talked about this project, I had said I kind of wanted it to feel coastal and have a little bit of a beach feel with sea glass blues and sands. So for the first color section, I have used 2 kind of similar creamy sandy bases that go with this ash heather. And I originally had, instead of using the cream, I had implemented this glacial blue, but the contrast was just too much for me. So I ripped it out and I added the white, and I have to make some decisions about a contrast. If I'm gonna just kind of stick in the same kind of sandy, yellowy tones with this golden, or if I kind of want to go dark with this beautiful like turquoisey teal, or back to the glacial blue. And I'm not really sure, but I am leaning towards these two as my next color. There are 4 different colors in the yoke portion. And so the other color I have is just like a really basic gray, like a brownie, another version of brown. But again, I might end up using both of these. I don't know. So there's some decisions to be made, but in the meantime, I am working on the sleeves. So you knit the sleeves flat and then work them into the raglan, and then you seam the sleeves at the very end when you pick up, for the button band. So I've been diligently working on this, and it's been fairly easy to travel with and pick up in the evenings, etc. So I haven't had to reference anything in particular, not quite like the lace chart that I've been working on. So the other thing I've been working on is an oldie I've had on the needles for a while, which I think I talked about last time, which is the Trondheim Cowl by Sophia Capella, and or Sophia's Tales. I'm knitting this in the Cashmere People yarn, which you can get from Port Fiber. This is hand spun and hand dyed yarn from Tajikistan, and it's a mix. I think it's like a Kashgora, so Cashmere Angora mixed of fibers. And yeah, so this is just a really simple cowl. It's obviously doubled, and then you will Kitchener it together. I love wearing cowls. I have one, and then I have some shawls, but I like a double wrap. So this has a little way to go. And I think it's going to obviously be super warm for those January mornings when I have to haul myself out into the dark and drive 50 minutes to work. So I've been working on that. And then I got past, I couldn't say a stumbling block, but I got past kind of an obstacle on the Decrafters Hat reboot that I've been working on. This is the 3rd time I've knit it. Originally I knit it in Fula wool, which was a kit put out by Fula. And then I knit it in Jamieson's and Smith in a color similar to, well, I shouldn't say Jamieson's and Smith. It was a mix of yarns from Stash, but it was based on a version that had been knit for the publication. And it was in this kind of darks, oranges, and teals. But Cameron took that hat and it was a little bit tight and didn't come down quite over my ears. So I went up a needle size, and I had knit the corrugated ribbing, and then I had kind of gotten distracted. But also I had to go through and remember what colors I was using where, because some of them are kind of similar shades or tones. And so I got that all sorted out one day, and I am working away on the main color work section of this hat. So this will be a great hat for canoeing. I love Spindrift and Jamieson's and Smith for summer knits here, because the nights do get chilly, but they're lightweight, they're warm, they're lofty, they're easy to pack, they dry really quick. So for all of the expeditioning and kind of woods and canoeing adventures that Rob and I do, this really is a perfect weight of yarn, and it's an all-season garment for me. So I've been working on that, and that really sums up the knitting. I feel like there was kind of some momentum there. We got things off the needles. We've had some progress made on some of the sweaters. And so I'm feeling really good about where I'm at. I'm also utilizing lots of Stash. And then Cameron is already asking for his next Lopi sweater. So I'll be thinking about that. Over this break, I've spent a lot of time doing a number of different crafts as spring has kind of arrived here. Ice went out. All of our summer birds have started to arrive. So loons and kingfishers, osprey, I had a yellow-rumped warbler, the hooded mergansers, so that seemed like the appropriate time to haul out some cyanotypes and grab some plants that I can access now. I detail that over on the April Patreon studio vlog, and I also detail some of the other projects I've been working on, like these bags from Noodlehead. This is the Firefly tote, and she has this pattern in 2 sizes. This is the project size, and then she has a tote size. So aside from the woolen wax that I featured on this episode, I got these 2 done, and I have fabric for some more. What I really like about them is that they use up smaller bits. And so as I'm moving through all of my scrap, as someone who has made clothes in the past, I have large chunks of beautiful fabrics that I adore. And I think I found a great application. I also have quite a bit of wax canvas hanging around thanks to Rob. So I got up to that, the cyanotypes, and some other fun quilting type projects. And so all of that I kind of put into the Patreon vlog this month, but we'll see how the bag making adventures unfold. Update on my quilting and how that's going in May. And I have a hankering to get into my art journaling and paper and watercolor. Now that I have access to my outdoor kitchen space, I say kitchen space, it's just a sink, which has a pump I can put into a 5-gallon bucket and clean things, and I don't have to be in my bathroom or my kitchen. It really allows me to broaden out some of my other endeavors. So I'm looking forward to that with the warmer weather. Thank you so much for those that contribute financially through Patreon. I am deeply grateful, and I am feeling that wonderful, invigorating momentum to go out and meet people and feature stuff that's happening around the state and abroad. I have booked my tickets for Scotland, and we have booked our tickets for the Yukon, so I'm looking forward to bringing some extra content about all of our travels, not only like I said, abroad, but here, headed to the cabin here in May, and a bunch of other ways to enjoy this great area that Rob and I live in. So again, thank you so much for those that invest financially, and a deep, heartfelt thank you for those that leave comments and insight. I read everything, and I really appreciate taking the time to provide me with your positive and encouraging feedback. On that note, I'm going to bid you a fond farewell, many fond wishes, blessings to you, and I can't wait to catch you up next time. Take care. Bye.